This conference will now be recorded.
Better be a good one. I'm not sure. I have not heard that he would not be here. Unless he had a little sort of costume that he could.
I'd like to call the Board of Supervisors meeting to order. As always, let's start with the pledge and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. We do have a quorum. We do need to adopt the agenda. Anybody have anything we need to add to the agenda this evening? Anything?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
I would like, I don't know, chairman privilege or something. I'd like to roll number 6 up under county departments and constitutional officers. So Brian can address that when he speaks under giving us his report. And then also I'd like to throw up number 11 under the same item or line of thought, just to deal with the American Legion and get them out of here in a timely way too. if that bothers anybody. Jim's gonna talk to us about, under discussion, about his Jim and Judd, about the Economic Development Committee and where they're at with that. But that's all just little stuff. Anybody else have anything you need to add, adjust, anything? What would y'all like to do?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. As always, let's start with public comment. Any public comment? Any public comment? Livingston's, anybody watching us? Just you, got it. All right, we'll do it again at the end. Constitutional officers, county departments, committees, and organizations. Mooney has the mic, so Mooney's gonna start. Mooney, please, tell us about facilities.
Good afternoon. We have a couple pictures Kim's gonna bring up. First of all, it should be the courthouse. The columns are back installed. The roof is painted. It looks great. They did a great job. It took forever to get them to do it, but the weather cooperated and they got it completed. The second thing is the arcade. The fence, the tore fence, all that stuff has been removed. The branch above the roof line, this is the before picture. All that's taken down. The spot looks great now. We're gonna have to do something with that fence in the backside of that fence. There's a fenced-in garden area because it doesn't have a fence line back there. So I've already talked to the contractor about replacing that. They're gonna use the same style fence, so everything looks exactly the way it do now, but they will add that little back section and redo the gates and all that to put that up back to par. We seeded and strawed out there. We also cleaned up the trees along the backside of the parking lot for the police department, those crepe myrtles and stuff back there, so that project's completed. We have Christmas lights gonna be starting.
Hold on, before you go past the arcade, are you have money in your budget this year to do some of the fencing, or are we talking about doing that in the upcoming fiscal year? And yeah, certainly there'll be 3 prices and open procurement and all of that.
If the board's okay, and I met with Jennifer, I think it was last week or so, just looking at, so we have CARP and CIP, so CARP's just some of the smaller stuff. There is, I think, around 60,000 or a little under in that. So if the desire is to move this forward now, we can. It wasn't something that was planned for, but in doing the research, property lines, I spoke to John Elmer, who used to be the property owner, now the Hillerts own next door. We just, I think John Elmer said his dad put that fence up years ago, so we were just trying to clean it up. We can go ahead and take care of that now if you like. My plan was to get with the Historic Society and say, look, this is the type of fencing now that Mooney's identified that we would like to go back with similar. You just have to add probably one panel to shift it to the right of the big tree where we cut the limb and then match it up with the side of the building. So I would imagine that's going to be, less than probably around a couple thousand or less. So there is funding.
If it's that kind of prices, I don't have any heartache with it, but if it starts getting real expensive, then probably needs to come back to us.
All right.
The price that I have is
Oh,
$2,000
much better.
to tear down that and replace it.
So that's all 3 sides?
Yes, that
Okay.
is all blocked in. And the only thing different, it won't be painted yet. We will paint that, my staff will, once the wood dry out.
Let's move on with that. That's good. All right, what else, Mooney?
I forgot where I was at. Oh, besides Christmas. Christmas lights we're gonna start doing that next week. We won't be plugging them in till after Thanksgiving. We just got a lot more stuff to do this year. Then we also getting prices on the front doors of the sheriff department. We have some rotten wood there. And I actually, it's not the door actually, it's the trim around the door. So I spoke with the contractor today about that. He's gonna give me a price on that to get that completed. Parking lot of social services, We have a low spot in the back of the parking lot. I have enough money in the budget to take care of that this year. So we're gonna get that spot taken care of, probably within the next 2 weeks. We just need to, talk to social services and get them to move their vehicles so it won't be in the way of the construction that's going on. Other than that, everything is, going pretty smooth.
Do you have any questions for Mooney? Mooney, thank you.
I'd just like to make a quick.
Please, by all means.
Hey, thanks for jumping on that so fast, Mooney. That really shows the people of the county, the jobs you do, and how impressive the turnaround time was, and just really appreciate it. I know Historical Society will like that too.
Thank you.
All right. Jerry, you want to go, and then we'll go to Brian.
We have our fall sports wrapping up here soon, and winter sports season will be starting not too long after that. Sorry. We'll be hosting our annual S'mores with Santa on December 7th with the Christmas light show going up after that, going on through New Year's. We'll soon be finalizing our 2025 event calendar, releasing that to the public. Also, a big thanks to Ace Collision for hosting the Wobble Gobble 5K on Thanksgiving morning this year at Hebron Valley. All proceeds will be going to Hoover Ridge, and so far as of today, they've raised over $8,000. That's all I got.
All right. Do you have anything for Jerry? Very good. Brian?
Good afternoon. Just kind of give you a brief update on the reassessment and where Wingate. So talk to Skip, who's the head assessor for Wingate for us. Around 90% complete with field work. So they got a few parcels up the northern part of the county. I think there's one or two tax maps down the southern end of the county, but look like they're anticipated to finish that up by December, they're hoping. So then they'll run numbers, calculate, hopefully have value change notices out. They're hoping January, the value change notices will hit out, have the hearings, and can finish up by mid-February, hopefully worst case March, to have final numbers. I think Jonathan had this on the agenda, but we did request a 90-day extension from the judge, and that was granted. All in all, you'd love to finish up by December, but in reality, the typical is finish up January, February, and that's where they're going to hit. So, any questions on the reassessment?
Jonathan, you want to make some comments on this?
I just wanted to add, and thank you, Mr. Daniel, being available. I just want to add, when you see that 90-day, I just want to talk a little bit about our timeline, because Brian and Mr. Thomas, all of us, either indirectly or somehow have had conversations. So you have simultaneous things that are going to occur. You'll have border equalization training. We'll have that lined up soon. The Wingate will be finishing up work. When I say work, kind of getting their final numbers. You'll have border equalization appeal meetings that have to occur in February, and that'll work hand in hand. It could maybe bleed over March. We hope to do it all in February. We're probably going to have to account for that in our budget calendar. We're going to be bringing to you soon, just kind of build in some extra time. But really in March, we hope it be finalized so we can bring to you an equalized rate, or at least consideration of equalized rate. And you can, kind of look at those numbers at that time. So I just wanted to add that time frame perspective, that we're not saying, Wingate, you got 90 days, then the Board of Equalizations occurs, then the equalization. It'll be working its way through by the end of March. Hopefully we'll have it all wrapped up.
Do you have any questions, comments, thoughts on that?
I just want to ask Brian, so the notices won't go out to property owners until the Board of Equalizations are done?
No, the notices
They
would
can
go
go out.
out when Wingate is done with their final assessments
And you think that's going to be when?
January.
In January,
All
okay.
right.
All right.
So we look to hold hearings end of January, beginning of February.
Yeah,
It's when the initial assessor hearings would happen.
yeah.
Then
okay.
after all their, after that gets completed, they sign off on the numbers, and then you have a year to appeal to the Board of Equalization at that point.
Got it.
mic's off. I think 2019 was the last time. I talked to some few board members that were down at VACO at the conference this week, and you're going to see a jump. We'll know what that number is at some point, but don't be surprised because housing, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home may have been around 250, 260 in 2019. That value is certainly much higher, maybe even, not quite doubled, but probably 40, 50% easy. So there's that perspective to keep in there. But again, these things will occur simultaneously. When those notices go out, Ms. Yao, then that'll kind of dictate if folks start the challenge. I believe we had around 16 or 17 last time. So I would imagine we'll have that at least as a minimum. Not trying to jinx myself, but if your values change that much, we anticipate probably a strong turnout for.
What about training for the Board of Equalization folks?
That'll be handled through our office, so that should occur, I want to say in December, but it could go as late as January, but definitely in December is kind of what I'm thinking.
Anybody else have anything on this? Ryan, what else you got going on?
Wrapped up land use. I did get submitted, Virginia offered the foregone revenue grant for forestry this year. That was unfunded last year, but they did increase it from $1 million in the initial year to $2.5 million. I think the first year we got 1.7% of that pot, so 17,000. So we'll look to, get 2.5 times that. So that's always good news. They did adjust some of the calculations on that, but I think that would be in our favor. So that's good that the forestry department sees that, and our state government understands that's lost revenue for localities and funds that. And we got personal property and real estate bills coming in, and questions and changes there. So remember the deadline, December 5th.
Anybody have anything for Brian? Brian, thank you. All right. Mr. Cave, Animal Control.
Good afternoon. Calls have been steady. We've had 56 handled in person, while calls handled by phone increased to 84 calls, with 13 after-hour emergency calls. Ian Collier received all his pre-exposure rabies vaccines through the health department, so he's good to go on those now. He's been pre-registered to attend the academy, which isn't until March. That's the closest one I could find. And he will be attending the Rappahannock Regional Criminal Justice Academy located in Fredericksburg. I'd like to give kudos to Mr. Collier. He's been quite busy. He completed all his NIMS training. He completed the 1, 2, 7, and 800. So he's all certified on those. He also attended a education safe handling course hosted by Hope's Legacy Equine Rescue located in Afton, Virginia. And Ian and myself also took a two-day virtual training workshop on animal shelter operations hosted by BOSS. That's the Virginia Alliance for Animal Shelters. It's where the two state inspectors went through and discussed shelter operations, regulations, and comprehensive animal laws. Other than that, that's all I have. If you have any questions.
Do you have any questions for Greg? All right. How's the Bass doing net, so we stay on the animal trend, then we'll go over to Jamie Wilkes. Annette, how's the shelter?
It's going good. On October the 4th, Autumn Care held a pet day, so their residents made and donated cat toys. On October the 12th, the shelter attended a Pottoberfest at the Mountain Run Winery, where we adopted out one puppy. October the 26th, we attended an adoption event at PetSmart for their Adoption Week. I completed some online courses called Fear-Free Shelters. It teaches shelter managers and employees how to implement certain, toys, blankets, lick pads to help with the stress of being in an animal shelter. So it's to help our residents feel more comfortable. Our numbers, we took in 15 strays, 17 owner surrenders, 14 cat transferred in. They all were from Madison. Transferred in 8 dogs, all except for one were already spayed, neutered, ready to go. That group has already been adopted. We had 4 reclaims, 35 adoptions, 12 transferred to Virginia rescues, 1 dog transferred to a Pennsylvania rescue. Currently, we have 6 dogs, 3 cats, 2 of which are already adopted, waiting to go home.
All right, questions for Annette? Annette, thank you.
Thank you.
Jamie Wilkes, how's it going down the hill?
Busy is the word. Yeah, so we're staying steady, and last month, Mr. Jewett asked me about single-family homes, and it appeared steady, but one day, we got, from the health department, we get the construction permits, we got like 15 new ones. That's for 15 new dwellings, that's just in one day. So there's a noticeable increase in single-family dwellings all of a sudden. So we're staying busy with that. Work is continuing on the EMS building. We've been out there, multiple times for various inspections, and it's progressing. Got some staff training updates. Joe Sexton, he's our ENS guy, but he's also working towards getting residential certification so he can do more for the county. He just attended the residential plumbing inspector course. I think it was in Richmond. And I think I forgot to put on here, but Carl attended the commercial building inspector. So people are continuing to cross-train or enhance their skills, and it's going to help us greatly. Our new zoning and planning administrator, Alan, is settling in, and I see where I forgot to finish my sentence, but he's acclimated himself to the process and how everything works in the office, because it's a lot to take in. I mean, we work with so many agencies. It's just Health Department, VDOT. That's just the routine ones. We got plenty more. Both Alan and Janet will be attending the VAZO, the Virginia Association of Zoning Officials training session in December. They only hold it twice a year. So as soon as we could get them in was December. And Alan has prepared an outline of kind of what was going on last month. It's in the packet that we provided to you. And Joe also has provided a DEQ report, his monthly report, and we've also printed out the monthly permit report with the new Tyler system, which is very detailed. We're still working towards the final implementation of the Tyler. That's the customer self-service and the online payment portal. We're working towards that. A couple things you might be interested in too. Hart, the process has begun. We just issued a certificate of occupancy for the small building, the temporary building. So, we had everybody out there. They met all their zoning requirements, building code. Greg and his, I forget his name, Ian, I think. They came out. They had to do a kind of like an inspection on behalf of VDAX. They pawned it off on them, so they did that. And then we also, housing's kind of limited here, rental property. So we just had a change of use and approved the CO for a older farm-style house that now is 4 one-bedroom apartments right on 29, kind of near 7-Eleven. That just got issued, so there was 4 available. They're probably gone by now.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, exactly.
And that's kind of what's going on down there in the building department and zoning and ENS, unless you have any questions.
What's the, and I know they're different, with complexities in both. For Joe doing plumbing inspections and then Carl doing the commercial building, what kind of timeline is that for them to get? And I know it's on whenever they have time to do it in a lot of cases for testing and studying and stuff. How long does it take to get those?
I mean, you have to get the class, of course, first. So they've taken those, and then it's just prep time for the exam, and we'll work it out. It used to be a really easy system where we did it remotely, but with firewalls and geolocation and all this stuff, we can't do that anymore. So they have to travel to a testing site now until we can work something out. It could be a month, it depends on how well they're prepared, because nobody likes to go take an exam and fail. I mean, it just upsets everybody, so they really want to prepare for it. So it's hard to give an exact number. It could
No,
be a
but it's
month
just-
already.
It sounds like it's a shorter time frame than what, I was kinda, everything in government takes forever. And you threw out a month, so I mean, good gosh, and even up to 6 months, that's like a realistic expectation for that. Is that right or wait?
Yeah, that's probably,
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yep.
I like cross-training, that's great.
it's great for the county, great for
Absolutely.
everybody.
Absolutely. Any other questions for Jamie? Jamie, thank you. Pass it back to the sheriff, would you?
Good afternoon. Good to see everyone. Our cost of service for the law enforcement side was $815 for the last month. DUI enforcement is up. And I want to shout out to Brian. After many, many years, I think our radio system is finally going to come true, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. I took upon myself about a month ago, you should have a copy of the speech study in your folder somewhere. Draw your attention to page number 1 at the bottom. This study was conducted the week of October the 21st to the 25th. Out here at the school zone, as you all know now, as where traffic on 29 is ever increasing every day. It's become an issue. So this was done during the morning bus traffic and afternoon bus traffic. For that week, we had about 5,000 vehicles came through and approximately 1,300 violations during that time frame. Speed study was conducted by a group, a gentleman I know out of Southwest Virginia. Page 2 at the bottom, it kind of just shows you that during this time frame, it was 229 vehicles over 21 miles per hour during this time frame. 436 over 15 to 20 miles per hour. Over 600 vehicles over 10 to 14 miles per hour. This is a contract. It's being held also in Rappahannock County, Greene County, Fauquier, Flint Hill, and the contract was given to the county administrator and also to the county attorney. We're waiting to hear back from them. I think there is something that we really need to discuss due to traffic on 29, people speeding through the school zone. It's a big issue. So waiting to hear back from those two gentlemen. Hope we can move forward and start with this process. And I'll open up to Mr. Weekly if you have any comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. So, yes, we'll have to do some continued work on this. Basically, what I like to do is I'll have a conversation with Hannon. I did speak briefly. Members of Rappahannock County was at the VACO conference as well. They were in favor of, obviously, they had started it. They're trying to slow traffic down on 211 like we're trying to slow traffic down on 29. So I really want to see, is there cooperative agreements out there? As far as any additional signage, is there anything from VDOT signs? So we can certainly bring this back as an action item for the board. I'd just like to nail down some of those variables.
We have questions on this? Yeah, I got a comment too. Go ahead, Jim.
No, the sheriff spoke last week with me about this, and there's unfortunately that intersection is a catastrophe waiting to happen. Somebody speeding through there at 100 miles an hour, they're going to wipe out a student, they're going to wipe out a family, they're going to wipe out grandma, and we really need to try to get a handle on it. Now, I will tell you from my experience of traveling through Greene and also Rockingham and Harrisonburg, where they have installed these over the past year, at least in my experiences, I have seen that traffic has slowed down significantly, particularly in the school zone in Greene. They used to have a deputy sit out there every morning. They don't do it anymore, and the traffic's actually slower than it was. Harrisonburg, two major construction projects on 81, 33, slowed the traffic down significantly. I think people are just more aware that it's going to happen if they exceed the speed limit. So that's just my experience, Mr. Chairman.
Is your proposal to run it 24/7, 365, or just run it during school hours?
I'm not sure. I'm just wanting to present it briefly to you, and I'm sure I can find out that information. Right now, I just would like to do it through the school zone. And also today, I also heard rumors that we need to do it over on Fairgrounds Road also. Traffic issues over in the morning after school traffic. So that's a question I can find out.
Anybody else? Come back with some information, then we can go from there. All right, thanks, Sheriff.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Fisher, you representing the American Legion?
Yes, I am. Yes,
All
I
right,
am.
tell us about your request. Good to see you, by the way.
Yeah, why not? I'll walk down here.
Okay.
I'm Mike Fisher. I'm from, I'm here to represent the American Legion today. Post 157. I hope everybody knows where that is. We're here to waiver the fees on the upcoming construction project. We received a grant of $306,000 from the Walton and Ida Thompson Charitable Foundation, which we applied for in 2022 and been working on that ever since. We want to redo the bathrooms to ADA compliance with showers. So if we have to, we can be an emergency service, emergency shelter. Current restrooms were built in 1947. So, I mean, some of that stuff is in there, has been there that long, when the building was originally built. We want to upgrade the kitchen and the electrical needs. Especially in the electrical department, we are just, we are going into unknown, because some of that stuff is really old. And so it sounds like a lot of money, $306,000, but I'm sure we're going to go through it pretty quickly. We're going to upgrade the kitchen, like I said, electrical needs, and replace the main floor of the hall, paint the main building, repair and repave the parking lot. Because those big, huge pine trees that we cut down, their presence is still there, so to speak. Chris DeBoer is going to be the contractor, and several local businesses are going to donate their labor, plumbing, especially plumbing. This is all to better serve the veterans of Madison County and Madison County itself. It was also, with the kitchen upgrade, we hope to be able to have more fundraisers out there, because right now the kitchen really limits us. Any questions?
Mike Mosco, do you agree with what he has stated?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do.
Good.
The Legion does a lot for the community, which a lot of people don't realize. In addition to posting flags out on Main Street, which you see today, we also do stuff for the local schools. We give out scholarships. We help a lot of the disabled vets and people with wheelchairs and things like that. We support some of the youth programs. And I could go on here all night with some of the stuff that the Legion does, which is good for this community. But I don't want to bore you too much.
Oh, it's a good plug. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, hey, Mike, is the Legion Hall, I mean, when I growing up here, the Legion Hall was, used by everybody. Is it still, can just the John Q. Public rent the Legion Hall for an event now?
Yes, and we also take consideration for, we have special, rental fees for people that need our help,
Yeah.
to do that. We also, if you're a veteran, you can get it pretty cheap.
All right.
Just basically the electricity and a little bit of water they use, and they can have it. And it's rented pretty often, but we hope to really increase that.
I'm for waiving the fees, but I have to ask, how much are we talking roughly? Do we have any idea? Yeah, Jimmy Wilkes, here you go.
I haven't seen the whole scope, but, I mean, typically, for something like this, it's not a couple $100.
Hey,
Nothing outrageous.
that's what I figured as much. What would y'all like to do? Probably do it as a motion.
Are we waiving tipping fees as well?
Make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve waiving the building fees and the tipping fees for the American Legion.
I second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, gentlemen.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yeah.
Mr. Fisher, if you all do have debris, you have a certain contractor that's going to be taking that out to the landfill, let me know, because I give all that information to them at the scale house. That way they already know when they show up, they don't have to be weighed in. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Gavin?
Good evening, everyone. Very small report. We are getting very, very close to the generator project at the middle school being complete.
Really?
I hope so.
All right.
And that's what I was going to qualify that as. I did not have a chance to touch base with Stacy today. We did do a flu shot clinic on the 10th of October for our residents, so we were able to provide free flu vaccinations for a certain amount of our residents that were out there. And just about done with the EOP update. I want to thank everybody that did get back to me and send back the information so I could get it updated. So hopefully I'll have that before you guys next month to ratify.
Do you have any questions for Gavin? Thank you, Gavin. Noah?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. So October was busy. We had a department record of 218 calls. Happy to see 9 minutes was our average response time. The no units available, 19 occurrences, 23 hours, 42 minutes total. You'll see down in the mutual aid requests that there were 7 dispatch requests to Madison with 1 answered. And just to clarify on that, Culpeper came to help us out 1 time, and then our team was able to manage with the request to do a quick turnaround at the hospital and manage the other 6. We do have 1 full-time vacancy for an EMT. I'd like to welcome Ashley Huffer. She accepted a full-time EMT advanced position, and Brian Marty, who accepted a part-time paramedic position. Checked in with the ambulance vendor for the 1 ambulance we have on order, 2026 of September. 2nd ambulance we have on order, December of 2027. Standby events, there were 6 calls at Graves's this year, helping out with football, Woodbury, and then the trick or trunk. And I'm pleased to report many, many thanks to the team, Gavin, for coordinating, but our pharmacy is now up and going on that. Mr. Weekly, I'm happy to continue on that one.
Chairman, any question on the monthly report? If not, this is the annual operation response plan.
Yeah, let's go through this.
Yeah, so just some brief background. The Office of EMS requires each locality to have an operational response plan. This needs to be reviewed each year by county administrator, board of supervisors, and EMS physician. Currently, our plan, we have a mobilization time, so that means time of dispatch to marking up responding of 2 minutes. And then we have an average response time of 18 minutes. And we have met that goal. We had 1 exception, and an exception is anytime you go over that, for mobilization time, and we had 11 for our average response time. So that means we were longer than 18 minutes. I think these numbers, I mean, they're pretty solid. I'm happy with what the team's doing. Medical director has already approved it. Mr. Weekly's approved it, and just wanted to share it with y'all tonight on that. We're getting busier and busier. I am very excited for Tiffany's presentations. She has some metrics that'll hopefully help reduce the need for ambulances for y'all.
Boy, we're really looking forward to hearing from you,
Yep.
Tiffany. Good.
That's
good.
the goal.
Any questions? Please.
Yeah.
My question is how many no units available are happening due to, I know could be 2 places, but I also understand that every 100 pounds you have to have 1 man, right? So how, can we keep track of how often that is happening? Like if you've got to send 2 ambulances out on 1 call because somebody weighs 205 pounds, obviously you got to have 3 people, right?
Correct. Our numbers here are actually not based off of patient weight.
Yeah.
That's the best practice scenario.
Yeah.
We don't get the patient weight at the time of dispatch. So
Okay.
our units go, what we see is if we get 1 call, within that hour, another call drops, and then nowadays it seems like a 3rd call.
So that's not the issue
Correct.
with this? Okay.
Yep, it's just volume of calls to the center.
I would like to interject there. I think it may be something we go back and look, we can like maybe drill down in just one specific month, because if you do have the internal rule, because we want to protect our folks as well and their health, they get there and they need that extra person, another ambulance is going out. So it's not all cases, but it is some cases, which I think will perfectly segment or segue over to what Tiffany will talk about here shortly as far as fall prevention or resolving through community paramedicine. But I would say it's fair to say some of the NUAs are a result of falls, not all, but some.
That's correct. And just to share with the group, our daily minimum staffing is 2 ambulances. So when both of those go out, we will declare NUA. We are managing some, knock on wood, all of the ambulances are in service. We do see when one goes out of service, there's a second one that follows it, kind of like call volume. So we're doing the best we can with what we got on that. Yes, sir.
Other questions, comments? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Livingston?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'll just start from the top here. Now that Fetty's on board, there's some things we've been able to get to. That's his name now. We call him Fetty. We've been able to get to some of the other things that have been cooking around that I just haven't had time to, and that would be Archive Social, one of them. It is required, from what I can tell, it is a requirement by some sort of law or ordinance or whatever that we have Archive Social so that if someone FOIAs it. So he will be coming around to the different departments. And Jonathan, we may need your help getting the message out to folks because I don't know, we got the whole separate duties with sheriff and the school and us and all that, but if they don't have that either, they're also going to be part of that.
So if I may real quick, so that's you and I offline, but real quick for the board and the public. So record retention is the same whether it exists via paper, electronically, or online. So that's what Mr. Livingston's getting to. We do have limited pages. Some of our pages are not our pages. So for example, volunteers created and maintain the animal shelter page. So we're not responsible for that. But there are others like Parks and Rec, I think initially had discovered this and we learned from that. So it is record retention. It's following that policy, but we can have a conversation offline and maybe our next staff meeting we'll push that back out.
I'm just bringing it up just simply because that is something that I'm going to have him working on so folks can, if the phone rings and it's him, then he's just reaching out for information. The transfer station is having trouble again with their phone calls. And the history of that has been going on for years. I don't know if Verizon is going to ever replace that copper line that goes to the transfer station, since they're going away with copper line. Just something to keep in mind if that keeps getting worse and continues to be a problem. We're going to have to come up with a different solution, which to me could be trenching a coax to there from the animal shelter, sharing that Comcast connection, or actually getting their own Comcast connection and setting up a VPN. But just a heads up, that thing is on again, off again all the time. So one day it's going to go, and we're not going to have a phone at the transfer station. Right now, the current problem, I'm going to get a detailed evaluation from Verizon. I'm going to push them a lot harder this time so that they understand that we want to know one way or another, are you going to fix this? Because they've tried to fix it many, many times. Just something.
What? I appreciate the comment about finding a new solution. Why can we not just get them a cell phone that sits on the desk? Why, is that just not a viable option? Or the judge says Starlink, and that's got to be something too. I mean, trenching's super expensive.
It's an option for me.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I think it's a good option, really. If indeed there's no other requirement that we have to have some sort of a hardwired connection there for some reason, then that might be where we're headed. And they could also use that as a hotspot for internet.
Two birds with one stone.
Right, so we can look down that route. Mr. Weekly, I'll talk to you a little, you and Mr. Gordon, a little bit more on that if y'all, how you feel you want to go. But it's time to do something about that. Ultimately, what's going to happen is we're going to lose the phone service there. And there's not much, the poor lady out there, she deals with it. Geocom, we are ready on our end, Mr. Gordon. And we have the server ready. We are now sending the specifics over to for routing and getting through the firewall. We are sending that. We are working with Geocom and Motorola to make that happen now. So our end is ready. We got those two folks together. They're coming up with how we're going to access it remotely, and we should be online with that. We got the thin client for the sheriff's office ready to take over and put on their TV so that they can start using that to track their cars.
Just give the board a little bit of update. What he's talking about is AVL tracking on the radio system. It allows dispatch and the sheriff to see where the units are when they're out in the field. We've been doing that for years with Street Trek on Moto Turbo, but Street Trek is ancient and will not work with that system. So we leveraged our current 911 mapping to do this. One of the real benefits of this is historically you've been able to look up on a wall and see where everybody's at. Each dispatcher will be able to see it at their station where everybody's at independently because it is cloud-based. And we're doing away with the server. And in-house, we're not going to need any more.
Questions on that?
And we also took away the one little teeny thin client that we're going to be, I don't know what's going to happen with that, but this is going to be a VM server in our farm that we manage and we take care of in the event that it has that problem with that. One other ERP, we had a study done on our server environment and our storage by Dell themselves. And it turns out, Laserfish pretty much got us looking at space, and then we decided to go ahead and do this whole thing. And they came back with a lot of valuable information. But just one thing to think about, sometime after FY26, I would say we're gonna need to we'll have a year or so, I think, to replace those servers. And I'll be getting the quotes and all the different costs and project details to the Jonathan and Brian, but it's probably going to be about $100,000 to replace those servers and redo our ERP system. But that's down the road, year and a half, maybe.
Yeah, but we need to throw that. We certainly need to throw that into the budget process under even if it has to go under like CIP or something. We certainly need to start figuring out how to pay for such things. Correct. Awesome.
Without getting too long-winded, we got some updates. Laserfish is going really well. We are going to go. We started diving into this a couple months ago because we wanted to make the decision on whether or not we were going to need to either go with it or cut bait and run. And the whole thing with the Laserfish is we have other processes in place right now. API between us and Evenity is one of them, that we do not have enough time between the bill coming due in November to rethink it all and redevelop a whole new way for Evenity to communicate with Tyler. So we're going to do it another year, but in the good news is that once we started diving into this, where there was darkness, now there's light. I sicked Alan on it, and he attacked it. And between him and the other Alan in Jamie's group, we are ready to give them their logins, let them get in, start building their file structures, and start using the actual tools in Laserfish. And once we've got them in there, then we're going to roll right over to Treasury and those folks too. But it's good news. All that time, all that effort, everything we put into Laserfish, I believe it's all going to pay off and it's all going to work in the end. So it's not money that was bad spent. It is going to bring us a good product. CCTV over in the courthouse. met with Clark. They're going to be getting Jonathan and Brian quotes on upgrading that system too. I got more, but
Seems like enough.
any questions? It's a lot. There's
is
a
a
lot of cool
lot.
stuff going on, and bringing Fetty in has really freed up a lot of. I'm able to hand him the network stuff to go document the county, our whole off campus, and we're getting to some things that I struggled to get to.
Positive addition. Anybody have anything for Livingston? Thank you, Livingston.
Thank you.
All right, Tilly.
I don't have a report this time. However, I do want to thank Kim and Jennifer. I was out for 5 weeks, and they held it down for me, payroll and HR duties, and also Jonathan. So I just want to thank them.
Glad to have you back. All right, Sean.
Good afternoon. For October, we had 86 911 calls from home, 369 from wireless calls. We received 2,088 admin calls into the center, and we made 1,128 calls for a total call volume through the center of 3,671, which is right on par for October of last year. But the total calls we're still up for the year, 114%. Our calls for service that we dispatched out was 1,178 for a total for the year of 11,856, which is still an increase also. With the radio project, I'll just touch on a couple things. I know Brian's going to mention a few things here. On the 22nd dispatch, we installed our new recorder. That allows us to record all phone and radio traffic through the center. The old recorder was, once again, kind of like an ancient, was on its way out. It wouldn't have been able to handle the new radio system. On the 29th, we did what's called acceptance testing for the system, where we just put it through some functionality and checked its abilities. That went well. Today, we finished installing our consoles at the dispatch center, so we have our new consoles installed. We're still using the old radio system on the new consoles, though. And then tomorrow, we're going to finish up some acceptance testing on that. And Brian's been programming portable radios, and we're going to be doing the mobile radio installation program starting next week after we go live. For staffing, at this time I have no vacancies. I have 2 new hires that started on the 15th of October. They're both working well and they're showing promise. One dispatcher has just graduated at the academy, and she's going to be finishing up her on-the-job training before she's released to minimum staffing. The next academy class is scheduled for February. For our community outreach, we participated in the sheriff's trick or trunk, and we handed out over 75 pounds of candy. Is that any questions?
Anybody got anything for Sean? Thanks, Sean.
Yes, sir.
Also, you really make this radio system sound easy, Brian. Ms. Warren, please.
Good afternoon. 3 updates for the board. The first one is on the audit for fiscal year 24. We did hear from our audit team. They are having staffing issues again this year. They are very short-staffed and behind schedule, so that it looks like they're not going to be able to get to our audit until the week of December 9th. And that will take us past the due date of December 15th and into January. So more than likely, the audit will be completed in January and the report out probably late January, first part of February. So I'll be putting out a public notice about the audit delay for fiscal year 24. We did upload everything to the audit team, but they've had some staffing issues again. Second thing I wanted to mention is the fiscal year 26 budget calendar. As Jonathan mentioned, we have been putting that together, a draft, and we'll present that at the next meeting. Now that we have the school's feedback on their schedule, as well as I've talked to the Commissioner of the Revenue on the reassessment. So all of that's coming together for the draft calendar we'll present at the next meeting. And then time and attendance, I did want to mention the status of that for Tyler Munis, time and attendance. We have trained several departments, and they are actively using the system. Pretty much everyone in the 414 building is using time and attendance now. We've done training with Sean's team at the 911 center, and they're going to be starting to use it soon. We've done some training with animal control, animal shelter, and Tracy and her team. The one hiccup that we have is Bruce and Alan need to get access, or do some configuration with the firewall so that people that aren't in this building, like at the visitor center or somewhere else, can actually click on the link and get to the time and attendance system. One got in it, okay. So there are a little bit of firewall configuration things that we have to finalize before everyone can get in. And then EMS, we had our kickoff with Tyler for their advanced scheduling implementation with Tyler, which is going to give them the capability of doing a lot of great scheduling inside of the Tyler Munis system. That's my updates. If you have any questions.
Are we still utilizing Mary Earhart for pre-audit stuff?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
All right. Anybody for that? Ms. Warren? Tracy, please. Thank you, Ms. Warren.
Ms. Warren did a delightful virtual training on that. Thank you very much. It's very easy to follow. And Fetty has already reached out to me, and I've given him half of his information, so that's moving along well. It's survey season for pretty much every committee I'm on. The Food Council just sent their actual survey they were working on. They're working on surveys from the Regional Commission for the USDA Farm to School grant, one for the school nutritionists, and one for farmers. They sent me the information to send out to farmers, so you'll be seeing that coming out in constant contact and social media. And then, on that note, congratulations to our mayor-elect, Mrs. Jennifer Campbell, in the building. Our next meeting for the town's Community Development Block Grant will be November 21st, and she's also sent out the final survey, so we can start sharing that information and on social media as well. Before I forget, Brian Daniel, we had our Economic Development Committee meeting prior to this one. He said he can send me a list of businesses that pay personal tangible property, so we will combine those, and I'll get that out. We had on the 29th, the Go Virginia Region 9 Council meeting, where the Wine Cluster Up Grant final presentation was shown, and also the Regional Entrepreneurial Initiative presentation was shown. And I apologize for attaching the 124 page entrepreneurial one, but I do have the bullet points for that. And so we are now moving towards the, as far as the wine one, going to an implementation grant next to do his follow-ups. We had an Economic Development Partners meeting on November 1st at the Charlottesville Airport. I'm headed to the VA1 Tourism State Conference tomorrow through Friday. And I submitted the VATI, I just copied it, the VATI update, and I think Mr. Weekly had already sent that out to you guys. But I wanted to say it because they did put our picture of our event on their report, so that was nice. And reminding people that we did get the VATI 2024 grant, which will be $12.2 million, helping 10 Central Virginia counties, including the ones that were not covered in the past one, the 2022 one. That's still ongoing. Connections are being made and work's being done. Tourism Committee met October 22nd to discuss Mary Madison, and it is a go with more businesses participating. Realtors Roundtable was November 7th, and Mr. Alan Nichols was our guest speaker there, and that went very well. Friday Night Christmas Lights is December 6th, and then the shopping, which all they attached. And there's more businesses that are listed on the initial ad are participating this year, so we hope to get more people coming in from out of town. For the entrepreneurship, the whole point of that was so that the economic developers did not have to have heavy lifting in this, because we would all try to have individual seminars and things and have maybe one person show up. So they're going to do it. Our OMG is back, Orange, Madison, Green. We're going to work together and do them regionally so that we have more people coming in, getting the information. The gaps are people, we get it out as much as we can, but awareness of existing resources people still don't have. Like we have the business consultant come once a quarter, free information, free consulting. She hardly gets anybody to come in. Access to optimal financing, professional peer support, attracting and keeping talent, which is across the board for everybody. Traded sector support, shared vision for the region, culture of entrepreneurship, and internal and external storytelling. So those are the gaps. And we're going to have a region-wide steering committee, establish local guiding committees, a spin-up industry support organization. This is all them doing this in Charlottesville, by the way, that part. Build sector-specific incubators and accelerators, which we can use some of our space for that too. Nurture an opportunity culture. Increase existing ESO, which is entrepreneur support organizations. Widen founder education of funding sources. Deliver cutting-edge training on tech and remote work. Amplify cohesive ecosystem narrative internally and externally. So it's a lot. And on that note, Rebecca Haydock is now going to be working, instead of Central Virginia Small Business Development Center, She's taking over the Venture Central, which was the entrepreneurship leg of UVA. That's most of that. So basically, that whole 104 pages kind of condensed down to that. Sorry, we didn't have that at the time.
Do you have any questions for Tracy? Mr. Jewett, you want to talk about your economic development real quick?
Yes, sir. This follows on her comment about a conversation with Brian Daniels to upgrade or enhance our list of potential contacts for surveys. We finalized the survey today, and we did some revisions on it. And the original plan was to try to get it out in December, but due to the fact that we've just come through an election season and people have been surveyed to death, and we're coming on the holiday season, what we are planning to do is to push the survey at the 1st of January. And the list, as we originally derived from Tracy, was we ran it by Brian to make sure that he could help add some people to that. We want to try to cast as large a blanket as we can, large as net, excuse me. And we are working on a plan, too, so that we can enhance survey response. The goal is to have the information in by January, the end of January, and finish the first draft of that report for the Board of Supervisors to start reviewing in mid-February. So we're maybe a month behind schedule, but I think we made some good mid-course corrections to the process. Looking very promising. Thank you.
Other comments on that one? All right, I think we've done everybody except Brian. Brian, you want to talk about the radio project a little bit?
Yeah, we are.
We might as well, does anybody mind if we just do number 8 real quick while we're on this?
Sure.
We're
sure.
talking radio, let's do it all together.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Radio system is on track to go live next Tuesday, November 19th, which we have dotted every I and T that we can find, crossed every T we can find. We are in a really good spot to do this. We have a couple loose ends we're tying up now. Had a third party came in and did an R56 grounding audit, found a couple punch list items. Motorola's going through at each site now and knocking that out. R56 grounding is very important. This system is synchronized by GPS. If lightning intrudes on it, power surges, things of that nature, it could be disastrous to this system. So they're going through and knocking that stuff out. As Sean mentioned, I'm getting all the portables together. Have been for the last 10 days. Should have everything passed out by the end of the week. November 19th marks 59 months since the contract was signed. So it's been a long 4 years, almost 5 years now. We are finally in a good spot. This system is by far and away magnitude over what we currently have, as we've seen with coverage testing. Shout out to Sean. I've handed Sean several things on this, and he has done that without any real interference from me. He's done a really good job with helping me out. He and I both took radio administration class back in back in October. This system, the management side of this system is huge, which brings me to the next. Any questions on what I just talked about?
Congratulations on getting us here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a team effort for sure. So what I have, the board report that I put up here, couple different things. As I just alluded to, the management of this system is huge. There are a lot of things. It's more of a complex computer network than it ever is a traditional radio system. Our current radio system is a conventional system. It uses TDMA technology to kind of give us some more capability, but it is repeaters. It's multi-couplers. It is a pure radio system. This system that we're going to is servers. It's switches. It uses all those things to manipulate how we use a radio system. We are using talk groups instead of radio channels. Things of that nature. Requires programming, requires updates. The first thing that I'm going to talk about is on-prem radio management. This particular outlay would allow me to program radios, program the system, and then push that information out to the radios by Wi-Fi. It eliminates the need of having to go to every department, get all their radios, bring them back in shop, or meet them, wherever they are to get these things done. Will this happen every day? No. But when it does happen, say Culpeper changes a bunch of their equipment, then we have to change code plugs, fleet mapping, things of that nature. This is going to allow me to do those things by the touch of a button. And when those responders go to the Wi-Fi networks that we have predetermined, then the system automatically updates their equipment. The second piece is Smart Connect. Smart Connect allows us to utilize Wi-Fi infrastructure up to 20 different Wi-Fi networks. For instance, there are places in the county that will not be very freely use of radio waves, for lack of a better term. Hardened construction, very, very tough buildings, Woodbury infrastructure comes to mind. Those buildings did not test well when we tested them. This will allow us to utilize Wi-Fi infrastructure that's already in play in lieu of putting in a $110,000, $150,000 BDA, whichever those may cost. Is it perfect? BDAs typically are hardwired in. They are very, very redundant to that effect. But there are ways to make this redundant as well and eliminate some of the costs that we may see on those BDAs. But it will also allow us to, if Woodbury has a Wi-Fi infrastructure county-wide, campus-wide. Instead of doing 20 buildings, we could cover one Wi-Fi network and get into those buildings and allow responders to get back to it. Basically, it creates a backdoor tunnel into our system when we do this. Price tag on these two items is $236,296. The reason we're looking at it now, we didn't look at it 4 years ago, was we didn't know where the project would take us. We knew civil costs were going to be expanding. Does this put us in a good spot? Mr. Weekly has worked with Jennifer here to look at it. Current capital, we have the money in there to do this project and still have some left over on the backside. I think it would behoove us from an efficiency standpoint and from a capability standpoint to really strongly look at this now. Happy to answer any questions.
And I'll just throw a couple things in there. Go back just right there. So as Brian alluded to, and thank you, Brian, for capturing all this. So there's the upfront cost of $236 and then annual operational side of $10,000. Jennifer did a wonderful job. Brian's got a good project file. The SNAP funds, or basically when you borrowed money back with the renovation of schools and radios and all that, there's an anticipation of over $600-some thousand left over after that last check is cut for the radio. This would be viewed as a change order, so it makes sense to do it now. If you were to close out the radio project, even though it's the same company that would be doing it, you'd have to go back through the whole procurement process. So it is it would be an add-on, should you approve it here tonight, to that existing. And it would leave us pretty good, balance remaining from those bond proceeds. So the funding's there, but certainly Ms. Warren put that information together, but it definitely looks like we are positive if you choose to act on it. If the other side is, what happens if we don't do this? You can make that choice if you want. Staff's not recommending that. The biggest thing when Brian brought this to me is the pain to have to go out and touch every radio or just track people down to get that would be a humongous effort. So it seems like it would be the right time to take advantage of these. And these larger buildings or additional buildings that could be built in the future of like warehouses, we don't have to go out there and try to get grants or it might not always be available for BDAs, which we're appreciative Brian was successful in getting one of those grants recently. So staff recommends approval, but I just wanted to throw out there kind of like that other side, if you went away, some of the challenges that it could create.
Brian, your grant coming from the feds was what? Was it $450?
$450,000.
And that is tied under federal law now to the BDAs that you plan on installing in the force.
Correct, because it was written into law with that congressional
Every other
act.
facility, this Wi-Fi component will take care of.
Yes. Yes.
And how many radios would you have to touch if we didn't do this?
There are 183 radios in the system right now if we don't expand.
How long is this software good for?
This,
I mean, is this software that we're talking about?
the 236 is a one-time, and then there's a subscription fee for the Smart Connect for $10,000 a year.
Does that ever the technology ever go away or get older?
I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will change over time.
5 years?
I would certainly hope we get more than that out of it. I mean, it's computers, right? If I have a Windows, whatever the newest version of it is, in 5 years' time, yes, they may say, yeah, this is here, but this still works. We have an SUA agreement with the radio systems to revamp these things every 4 years. I'd have to look to see if this would be included. But that SUA is going to cover a lot of those software upgrades, firmware upgrades, things of that nature.
You don't think with the ongoing cost that they'll be putting patches in to continually upgrade this software?
Yeah.
I mean, I do not, but, all right.
Yeah.
Jim?
Now, just a couple of things, and one of them's off the wall, but the first one is that with the Smart Connect, now, just to clarify, it doesn't matter whose Wi-Fi that it would touch, it will connect through that.
No, we have to pre-program those Wi-Fi's and passwords into the radio system itself. And my plan would be to go out to some of these places and actually have them create a public, say it's Madison County Public Safety Wi-Fi. Hide that from visibility so that nobody ever touches it, create a static IP on it so that doesn't change, and then create a static password that they don't have to change every 90 days so that it stays the same all the time. So it would be taking down some security measures that almost every Wi-Fi you see now, they have the dual factor authentication, they have the IP moves around all the time to create from hacking. We would make those things static so that we wouldn't have to reprogram the radios to those. That way the radio knows exactly what it's like, very similar to the LMR network that it's trying to find anyway.
Mm-hmm. Now, all the traffic that goes through Smart Connect through these predetermined Wi-Fi's, is this encrypted traffic? I mean, is it?
Some is, some is not.
Okay.
The sheriff's office is encrypted. Fire and EMS, animal control, they are not. There is a stiff up payment on anything encrypted. I can tell you that there are the websites out there right now are already picking up on this system. When we tested it, they found our control channel. They found all these things. You can go online and listen to Fire and EMS from Rockingham, Fairfax all day long. I would give us 6 weeks and we'll be in the same, which is fine. I mean, it is what it is.
Right.
I mean, you can actually buy a scanner to scan Fire and EMS with this new system. It's pricey, but you can get it.
Okay. Second question, and I don't know why this came to mind, but this entire system, the hardware, primarily the hardware, is it hardened against EMP? I mean, is that part of the, I mean, because you're not just talking about attack, a nuclear attack, but sunspot, solar radiation. I mean, how does that managed with?
I mean, the shelters we have are hardened. Are they hardened against an EMP? I highly doubt it. I mean, this is probably, from that respect, it's probably no more hardened than anything else anybody has, unless you're a government facility. But if we experience an EMP of that magnitude to start taking out things, I think we have a lot of problems across the board.
Okay. Well, thank you. I just was curious what the.
That was a good, crazy question.
That's the way I think.
All right, anybody else have anything for Brian? Ms. Warren, do you want to say anything about the funding mechanism on this? Anybody?
No, from an efficiency standpoint, I mean, it's actually a low price. I mean, it's a lot of money, no doubt. But when you have to start managing these things individually.
Well, you're looking at my time. Odds are, if I had to touch every radio every time I'm calling in Clear Communications, which their price tag is over hours, it adds up pretty quickly, as everybody knows. This would allow me to do it completely in-house, Sean and myself. My plan is to make Sean attached to me at the hip on these things. So if I get hit by a bus, for lack of a better term, he's there to take over.
I can assure you, some of the municipalities I worked at, they spent upwards of 3 and 4 weeks a year focusing on this. So,
it makes sense. That's the way IT's managed now.
What would y'all like to do here? Further questions, or we do have a recommended course of action. What would y'all like?
It would be, Mr. Chairman, if you choose to approve the action, would be approve the change order for the total amount, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, $236,296, and authorize Mr. Gordon to sign that change order.
What would y'all like to do?
Mr. Chairman, I move to authorize the change order for the radio system of $236,296.
And does that include giving Brian Gordon the authorization to
Yes,
sign
sir.
it? All right, yes, sir.
I second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're done with all those. Consent agenda, we have minutes from 10/22/2024, and then we have a supplemental appropriation number 11 for victim witness grant for $4,444. Anybody have any questions on these?
No, sir, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We do have some special appearances. Ms. Dupree from the Virginia Opioid Abatement Authority. Please come up. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I will just get the presentation.
Bruce, can you come down to make sure Ms. Dupree's microphone and everything's on? Or whichever one she'd like to use.
Someone gave me this one. All right. All right, so my name's Kat Dupree, and I'm from the Opioid Abatement Authority. I don't live too far away from you guys. I'm just over in Orange County, so anytime you need me, I'm always around. Next slide. So as you know, the state of Virginia received just about $5 billion in opioid settlement funds. So in this chart, and you can just populate all of it.
Nope.
This shows you basically the breakdown of all the funds that the state of Virginia is going to get from all the settlements. So if you look, the state gets about 15% of the entire amount, and that is wrapped up in the Commonwealth Opioid Abatement and Remediation Fund, which is referred to as the core fund. Then you have 30% here, which is coming directly to all the cities and localities in Virginia. So that's 133 localities. So you guys have your own direct distributions that you receive directly from the settlement administrators. And then 55% is what came to the Opioid Abatement Authority to then disperse equally amongst all 133 localities. From there, the Opioid Abatement Authority has divided it even further. So we have 15% of our total amount is set aside specifically for individual distribution to cities and counties. So Madison County alone has their own kind of piece of the pie sitting in an account waiting for you guys to withdraw it for programs. Then we have 35% of the 55% set aside for cooperative partnerships between various different localities within the same DBHDS regions. And then we have 15% set aside for state agency awards and 35% set aside for unrestricted, and this is what we use to fund the gold standard. This is what we use to fund one-time planning grants and so forth and special projects. Next slide. So the way the OAA funds have to be used are wrapped up in statutory requirements. So 100% of the OAA's funds have to be used for abatement purposes. They can't be used to pave potholes or anything like that by police cruisers. It has to be opioid abatement and remediation. There is no reimbursement of previous costs or supplanting allowed. There are no indirect charges allowed. The funding has to be distributed equitably across all the behavioral health regions in Virginia. The recipients have to report their outcomes of their programs annually to the OAA. And they have to be programs that are evidence-based or evidence-informed and specific for opioid use disorder. And substance use disorder can be secondary along with mental health issues. Only cities and counties and state agencies are allowed to be direct recipients. That doesn't mean that a locality cannot work with a nonprofit or CSB as a subrecipient to your own grant. Next slide. So we have a gold standard, and you can populate all the little boxes. So we have a gold standard incentive, which is funded out of our unrestricted funds. And essentially, it is a one-time opt-in for localities to use their direct distribution funds that you get directly from the settlement administrators. And we ask them to use it like you would your opioid abatement funds that you would receive from us for grants. And if you do so, we will increase the amount you receive that's set aside for Madison County and increase it by 25% every single year. And that's essentially asking localities to pledge to use their funds up to the standard of Exhibit E that comes out of all the settlement agreements, because there are multiple different agreements. Every single one has different rules and requirements as to how the opioid settlement funds can be used. Some allow for non-opioid uses, some do not. Some have restricted amounts. So the way the opioid abatement is set up, we use Exhibit E as very specific opioid abatement purposes only, and essentially it will keep all 133 localities out of trouble, because if someone steps out of line, uses more funds for something that's not an opioid abatement use, then the settlement administrators and all the pharmaceutical companies can take the state of Virginia back into court and settle for less money. Next slide. So the money, the funds that are allocated for all the cities and localities it's broken up by a measure of harm per capita. This is something that all 133 cities agreed to, and it's based on various different aspects, such as the amount of opioid-related emergency department visits, the deaths accounting to unknown and underreporting of opioid deaths, the shipments that came to the various cities and counties, and it is calculated for the cities and counties relative to Virginia. This is not including national, statewide, it's just specific to Virginia itself. Next slide. So just to give a little bit of kind of a visual, if you can populate the two stats on the bottom. If you look at, say, Fairfax County, this is where the most, about 13% of the population of Virginia lives in Fairfax County, but they are only receiving 8.67% of the total, versus Wise County, who has the smallest population, and they're receiving just shy of 2% of the total. So it's not based on population, it's not based on size, it's based on that harm per capita and how much harm was done to that community. Next slide. On our website, we have a lookup tool, and this is also going to be in our grants portal. This is available 24/7. You can go into our website and look up how much funding is available to date for Madison County. It goes on throughout all the years of the settlements. This doesn't include things like the Purdue settlement that we're still waiting to figure out how much is going to be awarded. This is funds sitting in the account right now that we have accounted for. So these are funds sitting there waiting for Madison County to apply to the OAA, and we have funds available as individual distribution, as well as gold standard incentive amounts listed out if you sign up for the gold standard. Our direct distribution amounts, these are just an estimate because we don't have direct access to what funds you guys have received from the settlement administrators, but this is a general kind of estimation of what you guys have received. Next slide. So Madison County is part of two cooperative programs currently. The first one is a recovery court, and that's in partnership with Charlottesville, who is your fiscal agent for that project. And then, of course, it has Albemarle, Fluvanna, Nelson, Orange, and Madison County. And the basis of that program was to enhance the program by adding peer recovery specialists, and this is pretty much run by the Jefferson Offender Aid and Restoration. And then you have the Peer Overdose Response Unit, which is run through Encompass, and that's done with Culpeper as your fiscal agent, and then Orange, Madison, Fauquier, and Rappahannock counties. And the purpose of this was to develop a peer overdose response unit. And so as you can see here, and you have the slides available, this is everything that they cover to date. This doesn't mean that they can't expand their services. It all depends on what all the counties agreed to. If you want to expand to do anything further than what they're already supplying, then that's something up for discussion. So right now, the peer recovery team, they started in January 2024. They offer peer support in the Sea Recovery Center in Culpeper, and that was decided as a central location between all the localities. They offer peer support, referral to medication for opioid use disorder, mental health services, referral to residential detox treatments, housing support, job support, harm reduction kits, and they attend community outreach events. And next slide. This is basically a snapshot of what our online portal looks like. Mr. Weekly is already signed up and in the system, and you can have up to 5 users in your system authorized. And so from here going forward, rather than paper applications, it'll all be done in the online portal, just to help with any kind of math discrepancies on grant applications and things like that going forward. And that's it. If you guys have any questions, I'm always available. If you have any questions for me now, I'd be happy to answer them.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I
Yeah,
may,
go ahead.
I asked Kim just to bring that slide back up. I learn a lot every time I talk to Ms. Dupre, which I appreciate. So we've been with the drug court for a little while, but the program that was on the screen, which is being administered through OAR, that's with that $5,000 number you see. The localities that were within there. Some chose to use a direct distribution. Some chose to use, I guess it would be that 15% that sets aside in the OAA. There are additional things we can do. One of the things I've talked to Mr. Prey about, obviously we have that peer support program through Encompass or CSB, whichever you know them as. There may be, as just stated, an opportunity to either augment that program, meaning do something at the local level, meaning we do not have to do everything a cooperative agreement. So far, everything we've done has been through a cooperative agreement. So there may be some other things. I know that I've been talking with Chief Hillstrom. There may be some things on the community paramedicine side, and you have to be very careful. You've got to track everything's about opioid abatement and mediation and things like that. But there may be some opportunities there for EMS to be able to enhance that, and therefore we apply for those dollars. I had a great conversation with Charlie after his workshop today. She drove all the way from the conference too, so I appreciate you being here tonight. I asked the question, do we have to have a program ready to apply to be the gold standard? He said no. I like that idea of doing that because it says you're going to use those direct funds as you would the OAA funds, so you do not jeopardize putting your settlement or other county settlements back into the court's hands for these pharmacy companies to really litigate this again. So it seems like a no-brainer. We will move to do that very soon. And it's really developing programs that we can start using this fund. I'm not sure if it's on the screen, but can you briefly talk about the FY, like 23 monies rolls off this year, for example, because it is somewhat of a use or lose?
Yeah, so the board of the OAA adopted a standard of a 5-year rule where essentially funds that are available in 2023, you have 5 years to apply for them. If you haven't applied at all for any programs, then essentially those funds would be rolled into funding the gold standard. So it's a use it or lose it, but at the same time, if you're applying, you're running programs, then you're making a conscious effort, then we're not going to take it away from you.
How much do we have right now, Ms. Warren, from this?
Mm-hmm. It's for the stuff that goes around the pharmacy and security for EMS for their opioids.
All right. Where is there a list of all the programs and things that other localities are doing? Do you have this list?
You all should have in your email a link It probably went out last week, to where you can look into that and get some ideas of programs. Certainly, I do not assign homework assignments to the Board of Supervisors, but that has been made available. There may be some areas around their acronyms, so help me remember SUD. It's substance use disorder. There was a lot of conversation on prenatal and things like that today. So there may be some programs that EMS themselves would like to use this for. We have put this out to Commonwealth Attorney's Office, Sheriff's Office, EMS, and so forth, just to see what those needs. And really, right now, the main focus would be to see if there's any qualifiers in EMS. We're really doing something on the legal side now, so we're going to try to work through EMS and bring forth a program for y'all to consider for us to apply. And I believe we have, is it by end of November or December where you can hit the FY24 grant cycle in April?
Yeah, so there's 3 cycles. The one for the December 6th Grants Committee, it closed November 4th.
November 4th.
But the next round and opportunity to get funding for this fiscal year, that closes January 13th. And so it gives a shorter period of time, obviously, to use the funds. So you have to have a plan as to how you're going to expend those funds. But it doesn't mean you can't have a carry forward into the next year for a program as part of your annual reporting.
All right, who else has questions, thoughts? Please, Judge Gleason.
Once you apply, how long does it take? Once you fill out the online?
It's usually about 30 days before the funds, 30 to 45 days before the funds are physically transmitted, because once it's approved by the grants committee, there's a memorandum of understanding that has to be signed, and then from there, it's DBHDS, who is our fiscal agent, who then physically transfers the funds. And of course, we need your account information and things like that to be able to transfer it.
Tim, please.
Thank you.
With regard to these programs, how many are targeted or participated in by school systems, or do school systems even touch any of this money?
There's several. I don't have a list of all the counties, but there are a lot of counties out there that are focusing on youth specifically. All of these funds, it has to go through the city or county first. And then if you choose to set up an educational program with your school, then you can use them and they can be a subrecipient of your funds and it can go directly to them. And it doesn't mean that you guys can only put in one program application. You could have 6, like Virginia Beach this grant season, this round put in 6 applications, and every single one of them was for programs for youth and in their schools.
Does the school here do any of that fund?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, now that they know this is available, I can't think of anything that they're doing, but we will definitely point it out. You think of anything?
No.
I do know Manassas Park. They have connections, and it's an FBI agent that comes in and does a talk in an evening to all the students, and it's specific for opioids and different drugs and alcohol and substance use, and I believe they do it for free as well. So I can put you guys in touch with them if that's something of interest.
Reach out to the schools, for sure.
Yeah, could you have school resource officers participate in this? And
Yep, so we've had a couple localities who actually hired and staffed a resource coordinator specific just for opioid use disorder, mental health, substance use disorder for students in the school.
so you said earlier, well, I think you said Purdue's award has not been decided yet.
Yeah,
So how many others are there out there that perhaps you might anticipate?
I don't have a count at the moment. I know it's Purdue. There's a couple others. I would say around 5 potentially, but there could be more because these are some of the smaller companies that were more the manufacturer side.
But could be substantially more to come then.
Yes.
goodness. Okay.
And I do have a breakdown of the funds that came from all the different settlements that I can forward to you guys as well if you need it.
Yes, please. All right, any other questions? Jonathan, what are we not asking that we should be?
I think it's more of awareness, as I just stated. You know, the more I talk and educate myself, it really understands what the funding's for, but how others are using it. So it's really going out there and seeing what others are doing, see if there's no need to reinvent the wheel, something that fits here. So again, I don't have all the answers on specific, we should use these funds for X, Y, and Z. We're working towards that. But we've put it out there to stakeholders. That link's available. If you all see something specifically, we'll check. I made notes here, Virginia Beach Schools, Manassas Park. We'll look as well to see if there's things that make sense for the schools, or if it's even within our jails or our juvenile detention centers, if there's areas we can target. It's a good problem to have money, but you got to target it for a specific purpose. So it's mainly, you asked last time, I think Vice Chairman Yao, you know, what type of programs are, so you all can consider how to do it. And I said, well, let's go to the expert and ask Ms. Dupre to come in and at least give you some of the basics and how we can go about applying and using our funding.
Yeah, I saw that link and I have not clicked on it yet.
It's massive. I mean, it's a lot, but it's available. So again, at your leisure for something specific, we'll go through that link again. But it's a lot of programs.
Mr. Warren, anything to add on this? All right. Anybody else? Thank you very much, Mr. Dupre.
Thank you very much.
All right. Ms. Randenberger, I'm doing a terrible job. Tiffany, come up and talk to us about community paramedicine, please.
So good evening. Thank you for taking me back. Believe it or not, it's actually been about 13 months since our initial presentation. So after 11 months of research, preparation, meetings, and presentations, our CP program successfully launched February of 2024. So just a review exactly of what we're offering. We're taking a paramedic off of the ambulance to go out into the community to some of our familiar faces or patients that have an unmet need when we're on scene. If we see that they're falling a lot and they could benefit from something like a walker, it's an easy fix. It just takes a couple phone calls, and that increases their chance of being able to be more safer at home. A couple of the things that we focused on specifically were care coordination efforts. Our goal was not to duplicate services, but okay, if I can make a couple phone calls of a service that you need to get you lined up that you may not otherwise know how to do, then that's what we stepped in to do. Resource navigation, which included durable medical equipment needs, anything from social services. American Legion was amazing. They have a Hot Wheels program that actually stepped in and provided 3 walkers, a wheelchair, 4 rollators, a shower chair, and I think a walking cane. We also looked at injury prevention. Falls is typically one of our top 3 EMS calls on a monthly basis. So that was one of the goals. If we're going out into the home, we want to look at your house and do a home safety check. Is your bed 2 feet high and then you're trying to transfer to your wheelchair that's 18 inches shorter? Chances are gravity is going to kick in and your chances for injury increase. So our other goal was cost reduction through either cost savings or cost avoidance. And that basically is, okay, can we decrease the amount of times we're coming out to your house in an ambulance, or can we avoid coming out there altogether? Not to say that we don't want to come out and see you, but if we can meet the need that necessarily taking you to an ER is not going to do, that was our goal.
It also worked to increase our operational readiness. If we're sending just me out to a house, we can keep that ambulance on the road in service. So we did this through using our 911 call data, as well as EMS provider referrals. If they would be on scene and say, hey, we see this patient needs a walker, or this patient doesn't have a way to call 911, those referrals were key in getting this program to be successful and trying to figure out exactly where our initiatives were going to begin. We would contact the patient then and set up potential program enrollment by doing like a home visit. I would come out and sit down with them. We'd ask them a whole bunch of questions and see not only what we thought we could offer, but what exactly their goal was out of it. Because I can have the best of goals for every patient, but if it's not something that's gonna help them be self-sufficient and something that they specifically want, it doesn't do a lot of good throwing resources at it. So the other big key to this program is we were specifically addressing the social determinants of health. A lot of people are not very familiar with these terms. It's coming more as we have a paradigm shift in healthcare. But specifically, the next slide will illustrate it a little better. So your physical health is actually only, your medical health, I'm sorry, is only 20% of your physical condition. So the rest of that 80%, can you go to the next slide? Sorry. Actually deals with your environment, your financial security. Do you have a house? Can you afford your medications? If you have high blood pressure but you don't have a house and can't afford your medications, obviously your health concerns increase drastically. So the bottom, the bottom ones in orange that focus on the mortality, morbidity, life expectancy, all of those are directly related to any impact negatively of the factors above it. Next slide. So we received 42 referrals from February to October for our program. 16 people were enrolled in the program, and we served a total of 20 people that met those program parameters. Some of those program parameters are if we had 3 calls or more to their specific address within a 6-month period, if they were homebound or bedbound, or if they did not have a caregiver at least full-time and potentially some limited resources. 11 people did not meet the program parameters. A couple of them we were able to refer to local organizations so that they would at least get some step up in the process that they were facing. 3 either completed the program or passed away during the program. We currently have 8 pending referrals. The Julata software that we purchased in February was used to track these 14 patients over a span of 9 months. Everything from home visits to did I make a phone call with them verifying the appointment, what their medical history, any kind of questionnaires we did on behavioral emergency, are they taking their medications appropriately? And 5 cases are illustrated as follows for that review. So the first case is an 80-year-old individual. 911 responded 5 times from May 29th to September 29th. The patient was only transported to the hospital once out of the 5 times, so the other 4 times were for lift assist calls. Since enrollment in the program, the patient's been extremely successful. He's only called us once for a lift assist. A little bit of background on this individual: they lost their significant other. And so, of course, that drastically changed their entire perspective. So that transitioned to they no longer wanted to take their medications. They had no desire to even get out of bed. With the help of family who initially started the referral, as well as social services and program implementation, the individual is much better off. One of the home visits, we found out that 4 of the 9 medications they were prescribed, they were not taking correctly. That includes either undertaking or overtaking their medication. The reality is that when you get prescribed medications, physicians don't typically have 20 minutes to explain how you should take them, what could happen if you don't take them, and when you should take them. The other aspect of this person's care is we got some more resources lined up. Family that was not even blood related to this patient actually stepped in and has significantly improved the outlook of this individual. As a result, they have been controlling their diet. They do get home delivered meals because they're homebound, but they've been completely able to come off their insulin injections. The individual does exercises daily to maintain strength, which is a big contributor to why we've only been out there once for a lift assist. And they actually have requested to be able to leave the house more often. Currently, their family takes them out about twice a week for routine things. They did get a referral to the senior center to be able to have a little more of a social outcome. So the next graph that you see, the blue indicates the ambulance transports to the patient before I started seeing them with the program. The orange are the visits that I've made, and you can see that there's no blue after August because we have not been called out there for an ambulance necessary since the end of July, I believe. With this patient, we had a 66% decrease in lift assist calls within the first month and no ambulance transports. Throughout their entire enrollment, we have an estimated savings of $2,300 and increased operational readiness of 3.5 hours. The second patient is a 66-year-old male patient that called us 7 times from July to October. They were transported 5 times. After a consultation was conducted with this patient in the hospital, we found out that they had run out of their medications, which was a big reason they were calling us frequently. They don't drive, they were unable to go pick up their medications, so they transitioned to that acute emergency type quite frequently because they weren't taking the medications as prescribed. Additionally, they were required to be on oxygen 24/7. For those of you that are unaware, patients on oxygen at home can use it through an oxygen concentrator. It plugs into an electrical outlet. That does great if you're at home, but if you have to leave the house, there was no option for this patient to do so. They needed oxygen, so as a result, they were missing medical appointments. They got diagnosed with a terminal condition, were unable to follow up treatments with that. We stepped in, set up portable oxygen delivery, and taught them how to do that as well so that if they get to the point of crisis or it's overlooked, that they're more self-sufficient. We also assisted with setting up transportation and a palliative care referral to a local agency to help them manage their chronic conditions more often. The success with this patient was a 33% decrease in calls after enrollment with a savings of $1,500, increased time in service of 2 hours. Only 1 transport after enrollment was needed. 4 additional times, we did get a phone call on the CP phone where we were able to go out and mitigate the emergency, avoiding having to call an ambulance completely altogether. Because of that, that gave us an additional savings of $6,000 for a total of $7,500, and we increased our operational readiness by 8 hours. The third patient called 911 20 times from February until August and was transported each time for the same complaint. We visited the patient 1 time and did a follow-up. They've been referred to chronic care management coordination, as well as education on how to manage their chronic conditions. After the first month of enrollment, we were only requested 6 times, and since in 2 months since then, we've not been out there at all. So the initial reduction of 911 calls was 46% in the first month for a savings of $10,500, increased in-service time of 14 hours. The following month, calls decreased by 100%, no 911 calls from this individual over the last 2 months, for a total healthcare savings cost of $29,500, and we increased our operational readiness of 26 hours, putting ambulances back on the street. The fourth patient actually called us after they broke their leg. The next day, 2 days later, they called for lift assist to be able to get in and out of the vehicle. They were non-weight bearing on that leg that they broke and had to go see an orthopedist. We stepped in after we saw that there were basically 3 calls within a week to offer them the durable medical equipment they need for the rehabilitation process, again through the American Legion. And as a result, with that patient, we were not called back out there. 100% decrease in lift assist calls and a savings of $800 with an increased operational readiness of approximately an hour and a half. So the average person has a follow-up visit with any kind of severe orthopedic injury at 2 weeks, 6 weeks, and 3 months. So we estimated this would have been about 6 lift assist calls for this individual And by providing the medical equipment to their house, that allowed them to be able to use their personal vehicle with the help of family to attend these appointments and not use the emergency response system. The fifth patient, I'm a little biased, was kind of my favorite, probably also the most complicated. We went there 14 times from April until October. The patient was only transported to the hospital 2 times. I know we spoke in the beginning of the meeting about lift assist calls. I actually wasn't aware that per 100 pounds we send an individual. So I know we kind of have our muscle memory of what we do as a crew, but specifically for this patient, for patient and crew safety, it did require 2 ambulances be dispatched to this individual whenever they did need a lift assist. Additionally, at the end of July, they suffered a below-knee amputation, so they went from just needing lift assist to now almost being completely wheelchair-bound. So we visited this program, this patient, enrolled them in the program, offered several follow-up visits. We contacted 14 different organizations because this patient really needed a wheelchair ramp. So with Medicaid, they do provide transportation. The problem is they typically will go to the lowest bidder, which means this patient was having to get carried down 6 steps, which were 12 inches apiece, in our stair chair to be put onto the stretcher. And then when they got back from their doctor's appointment, they were having to be carried back up these said 6 steps into their house. This individual went to dialysis 3 times a week. So you can imagine our crews got to the point where we were out there 6 times a week. First for the visit to dialysis and then for the visit back. Thankfully, Cardinal Home, after I went round and round with the insurance company and the other organizations, were not able to help. They actually donated the supplies for this individual's ramp, and we had 3 off-duty Madison EMS providers build it on their day off. 2 of them had actually gotten off shift that morning. We offered resource navigation with insurance help, as well as energy assistance, transportation needs, and then the procurement of the wheelchair ramp. Since the program enrollment, there have been 9 911 calls for lifting assist. Initially, there was a cost increase of $200 after they were enrolled because of the below-knee amputation and the limited resources with transportation. However, after the ramp was built, there was a 100% decrease in the lift assist calls, which gave us an increased operational readiness of about 9 hours a week and a cost savings of $4,800 a week. And I've just attached some pictures of what it looked like before. It's kind of hard to really see just based on these pictures, but as I said, the steps were 12 inches high, each one. So something that I learned is if you want to get one of those aluminum ramps to be able to put in place of this, because of the height of the steps, it was going to require something that was 40 to 50 feet long. Aluminum ramps don't typically go that way. If they do, the initial quote we got was going to be about $2,500 just to be able to rent it for 2 months. This family had limited resources, so we really just hit the ball running with a lot of my coworkers to figure out how else we can make this happen. After Cardinal Home donated the wood, we started the project at about 10 a.m. as soon as the patient left for dialysis, and had the majority of the ramp, with the exception of just the pickets on the handrail, completed by the time they were back 6 hours later to be able to use the ramp to get into the house for dialysis. That is the crew that was there. And then the following slide is the finished product. The next slide is something that our crews actually noticed while they were on scene. We found out they had a cracked culvert pipe at the beginning of their driveway. This is a huge risk for our ambulances, especially. They're a lot heavier than the typical vehicle. We were going there often for lift assist. Chris Dickens was contacted with their HOA and was even able to step in without burdening the family with more decisions, and had the project from the time we requested it and spoke with him to the time of completion was less than 2 weeks. So he was pretty amazing in getting all of that lined up. This is just a chart. I wanted to quantify the savings with a best guess. So we were assuming an ambulance cost at our cost without involving insurance, about $500 for ambulance transport, $400 for lift assist, and if they're transported to the ER, a whole number of $1,000. So before we enrolled these only 5 patients in the program, we had already incurred about $36,000 in cost. 2 months after enrollment, we have a total savings with both the avoided costs and the cost savings of $28,800. Our total increased operational readiness to the community was 53 hours. So I spoke to Noah just before the meeting, and the NUA times that you guys get the reports on, that 53 hours will actually cover the complete NUA time from July, August, September, and October with some change. What worked well? We have some awesome providers. I'm really blessed to work with some great people. And regardless of whether or not they were transporting these patients, they were able to say, okay, you know what? Yes, it may not be my job, but I can see there's a need here. So they spoke up and we did what we can to address those needs. We have some amazing community-based organizations that were very supportive and resourceful. I'm still learning about a lot of them. The best thing I love about Madison is that small town compassion where everybody was stepping in to help county residents. So in addition to the 14 organizations I contacted initially about this ramp, I also visited a Home Depot and 2 different Lowe's. And while they were not able to help out, Cardinal Home, a local business, was. The Julata software was very helpful for patient tracking through the program. Prior to that, I was using spreadsheets, so this really just streamlined the entire workflow process. Opportunities for improvement. Staffing. Currently, we're unable to dedicate full-time hours to the program, and working independently for the program implementation is just a constant struggle. We don't have any set program hours for the community to utilize the program, so the biggest concern is if we're failing to assist or address a resident need in a timely manner. For our EMS schedule, we do work 24-hour shifts, but with our rotation, we do have a gap of 4 days off. So if I'm calling a phone because I need something, I don't want to wait 4 days off for someone to call me back. So we try to make a valiant effort to get back to any phone calls or requests within a 48-hour maximum, ideally within the first 24 hours. Currently, there isn't a billing process for reimbursement for our program in place yet. We are working to mitigate that. We have an upcoming meeting with the local physician's office this week, actually. We've already reached out and spoken with our billing company to figure out what we can do to get insurance involved, whether it's through a managed care organization and they want to save money and give us a capitated payment, or we work with telemedicine and figure out how we can partner to bring care to the patient that would otherwise not be able to obtain that medical care. Transportation for home visits was also initially a struggle, but we had a signed MOU with Encompass Community Supports and the Regional Transportation Collaborative, which also provided the brochures that I handed out at no cost to us. They partnered with us, and they actually have parked their volunteer transport vehicle in our upper parking lot at the EMS station. So they have a Voltrans organization where they have volunteer drivers that will take residents to medical appointments if they schedule it ahead of time. That vehicle is also used for that. So it's kind of meeting 2 needs in one spot. The biggest successes of this program, we improved the quality of life significantly for these 5 individuals. We increased our operational readiness of 53 hours for our ambulances to be available, and that's just with 5 patients. We have been having a total of 14 patients enrolled in our program. Those 5 were just the ones that were involved in the longest amount of time that had a little more complicated situations. Significant cost savings with the program and 911 call avoidance. Additionally, we installed 30 smoke alarms and 6 fall alert devices. They did publish an article in the Madison Eagle once the program, a few months after the program launched, which I thought was amazing because part of it is education. This is still a quite new concept to many individuals. The second picture is the adult aging expo that we attended in Culpeper. Although the biggest thing from that was probably people that needed smoke alarms, it's still a win because we're still able to provide a tangible asset. So in the beginning of this month, the Joint Commission on Healthcare for the state of Virginia actually published a report, and it included community paramedicine and mobile integrated health in the 92 pages that were reviewed. Additionally, it included 26 MIHCP programs for the state, and you can see that Madison was one of those. Another aspect of this is Delegate Rodney Willett, which was part of combining and completing this report, is actually going to be at one of the conferences that I'll be attending next week for the Rural Health Voice Conference. So I'm looking forward to a dialogue with him to try to see what else we can do for these rural areas. And the next slide is just a huge thank you to all of these organizations, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some, have participated throughout the process, either with tangible assets, with guidance, with referrals. So it truly has taken more than a village, and it just really demonstrates a lot of the passion that these individuals have when they are doing whatever they can for the people that they live around. And I will open up if you guys have any questions.
Have any questions or comments? Please, Jim.
One question, and I know this might be very hard to quantify or project, but based on your professional knowledge, your experience, and the knowledge of the community, what is the potential demand for such a program if we're fully implemented? How many, I mean, reasonable ballpark estimate?
Of how many people would be enrolled in the program?
Yes.
I can tell you it's probably going to be over 100,
Okay.
easily. So over 50% of the population in Madison is 45 or older. So unintentional injury rate, which is something that we see with EMS. So these unintentional injuries are like a motor vehicle accident where it causes an accidental death, a fall where now they've got a head injury that proceeds, or an infection from a femur fracture, they broke their leg, now they've died from a secondary source. The rate for Madison County is actually 18% higher than the US average for these unintentional injuries. And it's 26% higher than the state average. So 1 in 4 individuals over the age of 65 are going to fall. You're twice as likely to fall in the bathroom. I can tell you in the past 2 months, our fall calls have increased drastically. It's just a matter of you're not as physically capable as you were. A lot of people are rushing. So the need is extravagant. That's been probably one of the hardest parts of this program is we know that the need is there and we want to help so many people, but without risking throwing all of our resources in different directions, we've had to concentrate on a select few. But I can tell you this is, in my opinion, the paradigm shift in EMS is really how can we keep these people at home? If it's not something that's super acute where an ER has to intervene, the majority of these calls can be handled at home. And currently, about 30% of our 911 calls are not transported, so that would be the population that we would be appealing to.
2 follow-up questions,
Yeah,
Mr.
please.
Chairman. Do you ever encounter resistance to your services from any individuals that just refuse help, don't want you in their business, that sort of thing?
Yes, absolutely. Again, that's the hardest part because you know what the capacity and ability for this patient to be able to be successful is, but that is part of realizing that our goal might not necessarily be their goal. So we try to offer what resources we can, but at the same time, if they're not ready to make that change in their decision or lifestyle, it's not something we can force them to do.
Mm-hmm. And one last question, and you did mention this during the presentation. What are the possible funding sources that you could tap, the reimbursement sources like insurance or Medicaid or Medicare? I mean, what's the estimated potential for recovering costs in this program using those potential resources?
Sure. So once we get the model situated, it's extremely, the potential is high. So when we spoke with our billing company yesterday morning, actually, the way they would bill it as the same fee essentially for a BLS or ALS ambulance, they just wouldn't charge that mileage. So you're looking to recoup at minimum probably $200, at maximum probably $500. The $500 would be a stretch. If we partnered with a physician organization, which is something that we're currently pursuing, it would work through bundled payments or capitated payments, like a per member per month fee or whatever they decided to negotiate.
But other organizations that are billing, the average bill rate for a community paramedicine visiting a home that's submitted to insurance is about $180 to $220. So if you think of that, the capacity of having 100 patients in the program, then the reimbursement is definitely there to pay for it, and then some.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, on that, great job. And it's her passion. You can see that coming out in her brilliance. So the joint commission, the health report, and we have pushed that out as a legislative concern. What we're hearing back from Ellen James is trying to see if someone can sponsor it. He's going to concentrate on delegates that were in the report versus, because he asked me, you have a certain local legislator? I said, sure, here's some names, but it may be advantageous to start with the ones who were working on this commission report. So I know Medicaid expansion, anytime you start expanding programs, there's a lot of conversation around that. But if you could expand the Medicaid part to have the billable, as Tiffany pointed out, similar to the ambulance or the revenue recovery, whichever you know it as, that's one funding source. And I know we didn't talk about it tonight, but I will connect you two at some point. If we can connect some of these calls to opioid, which is part of the program we have with Encompass, but we can look and enhance ours, that's another funding source. And then hopefully if any trending down of calls and savings, you can use some of that in-house savings, if you will, to bolster your program. So that's at least 2 or 3 funding mechanisms, a lot of which wait on a legislative body to do so. I have also sent them the West Virginia bill that you sent me that was passed last year. So there may not have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to drafting Virginia's legislation. But early on, I'm hearing that don't expect it to pass this year, but they will start working with the legislators who were involved in that commission report. So I just wanted to augment that answer with additional funding. So I think we'll work a little more on the OAA side as we are also pursuing the legislative effort on the Medicaid.
I just have a quick question. Just
Yes, sir.
curious, so once they sign up, they're not dialing 911 any longer? Are they calling a direct line to the EMS service? Or do they still call 911 but say they are connected to this new program?
So they're still calling 911 if they validate a need. I get a report. If we do have a patient enrolled in the program, Julata automatically sends me a newsletter report every other day of whether or not someone in our program has called 911. If that is the case, then I set up an appointment with them. I go out and try to figure out, okay, did we miss something? If so, what did we miss? But the biggest thing we're seeing is that because we're having a relationship with them in a different capacity, they're no longer needing 911 in an acute aspect.
How do they get a hold of you, though?
So once I get a referral, I reach out to them and I do bi-weekly check-ins generally with our program enrollees to make sure that there's not a need that we haven't met or a struggle that they're currently facing.
Okay, great. And it's just a great program. Thank you so much for doing what you do. It's amazing.
Anybody else? Thank you very, very much. All right, we've already done, we don't have public hearings, old business we've already done. Mr. Weekly, tell us about the declaration of fire prohibition.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and for Mr. Gordon's efforts put into this. As you may recall, I believe it was back in August of this year, you all, after a public hearing, amended your ordinance to allow for fire prohibition. So it's different. A lot of times these things are done through an emergency declaration, such as I dare say it, such as the wildfire about a year ago. And that's what really led to this. We need a switch to be able to turn on and off when conditions present. There's a lot of scientific data. Brian loves this stuff. He's showing me all of his screens, and it's relevant. But based on conditions that were out there last Friday, there were other counties that were more so in that red flag area. But our drought index was definitely of concern, along with winds of that day and humidity levels. So felt it prudent to enact the fire prohibition. And that was for a short period of time. I know some people would probably think, well, why not the whole day or longer? Well, it's about people's rights too. So we're not trying to restrict that if conditions exist that are not of concern of fire, but if they are, we want to minimize that. So this was put out through HyperReach, I believe it was HyperReach, as well as our website. We sent it out to the press as well as Shenandoah National Park to make them aware. Brian worked with the athletic director. We canceled the fireworks, trying to do our best during those times to during that heightened alert of fire. So as required per the ordinance, the Board of Supervisors, I'm required to take this to the board to ratify it at their next meeting. So essentially, your action, if you choose to do so tonight, be ratifying the declaration of fire prohibition dated November the 8th, 2024.
What'd y'all like to do?
So
Miss-
moved.
Go ahead.
Does that work? You want the whole
Yeah,
thing?
that works.
All right.
Second.
There you go. Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, done the radio, look for reappointment to the Rapidan Service Authority. Mr. Weekly?
Yes, sir. Mr. Clemens, the general manager for RSA, have reached out. As there's a letter in your packet to make me aware that one of our two representatives, Mr. Troy Coppage, who's one of the two Madison representatives on the Rapidan Service Authority Board, his term comes up at the end of this year. So we did ask if he's willing to serve again. He said he would be willing to do so. He is eligible. I know some committee assignments have term limits, but he is eligible to be reappointed should this board choose to do so. So he's willing, and we're bringing this to you tonight for considering of reappointment.
What would y'all like to do with Troy Coppage on our side?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we reappoint Troy Coppage to the RSA Board.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Also, we've got to see if Mr. Clemens and RSA, and I am saying this publicly, can resolve the issue at the end of Main Street on the south end of town. It's taking too long. It needs to be resolved. They need to get on the job.
I agree, sir. I believe, Kim, you looked up. We believe their meeting will be over in Orange. So if, I'll check my schedule if it allows. I will go over that. If not, I'll talk to our two members to convey that, so they can convey that at that meeting. Staff at that authority works for a board just like I do. So I will encourage our membership, Mr. Chairman, to give that directive, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Department of Historic Resources, Krugerville School Draft Nomination. Mr. Weekly?
So, Mr. Shapiro, who recently came through our last preliminary review development committee. Whew, I got that right. Thank you, Mr. Yeah. And it'll eventually make its way through. Yeah, I don't want to mess up and say PEC though. So he will be making his way through the workshop. He's going to be applying for a rezone. One of the things he made us aware of is he has applied for this historic designation, and it seems like this nomination will be presented at the state level on December 12th. However, it's required for them to give notice to the locality, and if there, for your review, and if there's any comment you wish to make. Staff doesn't recommend any comment per se. My main thing when I saw this is this creating historic designation just for his property, so it's localized, or is this the whole village? Because some folks may want that, some don't. It's my understanding that it's localized to the property that he owns. So staff has no adverse comments, but it's definitely up to you to decide if you have comment, or really I wanted to get this to you for information.
Do they have any questions, comments, thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Weekly, as we all know, we had issues in the past with this property. And I understand that I have some idea what Mr. Shapiro is attempting to do with it. And my hope is that we can avoid some of the problems that we faced in the past. And that as his applications come through pre-development and then the planning commission, that we try to keep that on track, make sure it's legal, make sure it's complete, make sure we have no opposition from the neighbors. We don't want to end up in any more legal problems with this property. Again, as I stated before, I wish Mr. Shapiro luck with his development. I think it'd be good for the county if it is successful. But again, knowing the potholes that we tripped in before, we hopefully want to keep in mind that want to try to avoid that this time. Thank you.
Yes, sir, understood. Thank you very much, sir.
There is going to be opposition from neighbors. That's just what it is. I think we see it on such a regular basis, and personal property rights is paramount, I think.
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
please.
just to give a little update, because I think it's warranted. Currently, Mr. Shapiro is working, this will be a conditional rezoning. So there are proper conditions in that, and I believe they've made their way to Mr. Wright. So we've seen those, but certainly that has to work its way through the process. And remind me, we'll go ahead and send that out. What's going to the Planning Commission, we'll send that to the board. So you're seeing it at the same time as they are.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, this whole process is asking the county for comment, and I would assume that would be either we want to support it or not. I think we ought to just say that we received it and we have no opposition or we have no comment at all. I mean, I don't see why we need to comment.
This goes back to that personal property rights. This is his property at this point. We've been through the sale and the closing. If he wants to make it as a historical designation, then why? That's his deal.
Yeah.
The only issue I would have with historical designation is if an individual tried to get an entire area set, and then people were faced with having to opt out, which.
No, that's not.
That's
not going to work. And then we went through that with his original, one of the many meetings we went through with him. And that's not a good thing for anybody to impose upon an area or other citizens.
Being designated historical, though, does it affect the tax rate?
I don't believe on our side, on the state side, it certainly does.
Yeah, no.
And we can check on that. Yeah.
I'll check with Brian.
Say, it is part of Mr. Shapiro's, I think, his business model is that having the historic designation definitely frees up capital. But that's his business. Anything else on that? We've already done American Legion. January organizational meeting and joint meeting reschedule. Mr. Weekly.
Yes, sir. So normally, Mr. Chairman, and well, not just normally, but your bylaws and your schedule, your organizational meeting is always to occur unless you vote otherwise, and that's why we're discussing in advance here tonight, would be the first business meeting of the calendar year. So for 2025, that would fall on January the 2nd. However, I think there may be some scheduling conflicts, so we wanted to raise that issue. As well, normally the joint meeting between the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors falls on the first Wednesday of every month. So, and talking with the chairman, we put this on the agenda so you all can look at your calendars and see if there's a more appropriate date, possibly that following week. But this would have to be a motion or action by the board to set those new dates so we can adjust calendars and give notice to the media.
I'd like to do this meeting on the 6th. That's the week after the new year. We do it at 9 o'clock on Monday the 6th. Does that work for everybody? And then the joint meeting, since it is a federal holiday on the 1st, I would think that we would move that joint meeting to the 8th. The only caveat that goes with that is the work session will be the next week for the Planning Commission. I propose we leave that alone. That's where I'm at. Everybody okay with that?
And then when would be our first meeting for the 4 o'clock session?
The 14th.
Assuming you all do not change the bylaws there, you would meet January 14th at 4 p.m., sir.
What do you got, Judd? All right. Anybody else have anything?
1-6-1-8, yeah, that works.
All right. You need a motion for this?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's see, Mr. Chairman, I move that we have our reorganization meeting on January 6th at 9 a.m. And we reschedule the joint meeting with the Planning Commission to January 8th at 7 p.m.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Jim, do you have anything else on economic development under discussion?
No, sir, we covered that already.
Anybody else have any discussion? What about information and correspondence? All right, back to public comment. Any public comment? I did notice we had one person watching us at one point. Two, that's big. Counting us, we really racking them up. Any public comment? All right, we do have a closed session. Thank you all.
So, Mr. Chairman, I move that the board convene in a closed session pursuant to Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711A29 for discussion of the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds, including interviews of bidders or offers, discussion of the terms or scope of such contract, where discussion in open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Who seconded it?
Take just like 5 minutes.
Dustin, did you second?
did.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
Oops, come back.
Good call on not making dinner.
Are we offline, Bruce? All right, I don't want any TMZ recording.
Hot mic.